I'm Colby. I'm an alcoholic. I guess I'll just share my story then and get into it. But to touch on what Troy did, yeah. It's funny because we were talking the other day. This mic is going to drive me nuts. But we were talking the other day, and he was at his brother's house. And that's actually where we did a lot of drugs in that basement together. And it's just different to be on this side of it with him, and I'm truly grateful to be on this side of it with him. But, all right, so how it all started. I grew up here locally in Orem. I have a bunch of brothers, 5 brothers and 1 sister. And my parents are both alcoholics, so it was just kind of what I saw growing up, and it was normal. And then over time, so my mom and dad, it was always back and forth and bouncing around. They got divorced and remarried, I think, like 3 different times. So it was tons of fun. But then, like, the pivotal turn for me, like, I could go into all this stuff, but really the truth is my mom passed away when I was 13 in a car accident. And before that, I felt like I was a pretty good kid, even with everything that was going on. But something just flipped. And at that point, I was like, I don't really need you, God. I'm good. I'm gonna take the reins from here. And within, I think it was a month, was the first time I had my first drink. And I loved it. Like, it took everything away. Made me feel at peace, made me feel at ease with everything. And it I was like, okay, now I see why they do it. It helps me cope with life. And then fast forward, I just did the typical high school partying and didn't really think I had a problem. But as, looking back, because you get in, you start to look back at this stuff I'm nervous. But looking back at it, like, I would do things and my friends would do them too, and they'd be like, I'm never going to do that again the next morning. And I'd be like, what are you guys talking about? That was great. For me, it was whatever I could do to make me not feel like me and get outside. I didn't care what it was. Alcohol, you name it, And, I still had to put on the show, though. I had to still act like I had my shit together. I still had to kind of go to school and just barely get enough grades so I could play baseball and play sports and do the things I wanted to do. Slowly but surely, baseball became less important, and the partying was more important. And then after high school, just progressively kept getting worse. It was not anything that, drugs got involved, obviously, because for me, alcohol is just a starting point. Always has been. And, I get out of high school pretty much, and I know it's a drug, but I'm going to talk about it because it's a big part of my story. I got introduced to Oxycontin when I was 17. And I tell you what, that made me feel like I was on a cloud and I was good to go. It was like, this is it. This is what I was looking for with the alcohol and with the weed and with all the other stuff I did along the way. This was it. And so I just hooked onto that, and I was like, it's time to go. And I was going to do whatever I could to get that and make sure I stayed feeling that way. Over time, like for the next few years, that's all I did. It was my main focus while still trying to act like I was still a good guy, Like, I still had to have all these girls I was dating along the way. I had to have their parents like me because I really needed people to like me, because I hated me, if I'm being honest. And progressively, with that particular drug, me and all my buddies did it, and it got worse, and they got away from it, and I just kept going. And then 2000, so a year out of high school, I got arrested. Got put in a drug court, and you think, oh yeah, that'll stop me, So I pawned my dad's guns, and he came down to me, and he's like, Colby, where's my guns at? And I'm like, they're at the pawn shop. I just told him. And he was not thrilled about that. So he's like, well, let's go to the police station. So I was like, all right, let's go. And I'm thinking I'm going to go to jail and I'm going to get sober. I was like, hell yeah. And no, I go to freaking Orem PD, and the guy says he's going to OR me and let me go because I was honest. And I'm like, dude, you're not going to catch me. I'm like, I'm going to go and you're not going to find me. I don't know how that happened, but so needless to say, that's how I ended up in drug court. And I went to drug court, and that's when I got introduced to AA. And I went there, saw people that were happy and were in a good place, and they were just fine, and I didn't want that. I was 19 years old. I still wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I stayed as far away from this program as I possibly could for the next 14 years. Like, I went to treatment centers that were Buddhist philosophy rehabs, and I went to just anything I could do to stay away from AA because I didn't want to stop. And I kind of skipped ahead a little bit there, but I did everything I could to stay out of this program. Like, I tried maintenance things. I tried methadone, Suboxone. I would try just the alcohol and weed diet when I would go get out of treatment because I was like, I can still drink and smoke weed. I'm good. No, it never worked. Like, for me, I'd start drinking, and I'd do it for like 9 months. And it was like, oh, I'm just going to drink on the weekends. That's all I'm going to do. And hold my job, and I'd drink on the weekends, like the entire weekend. And I'd go to work on Monday, and I'd be fine. But then football was on Monday nights, and football was on Thursday nights. So then I had an excuse to drink on Monday and Thursday night. And so I'd be at the bar Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it progressively just, for me, when I really look at it, the oxys and all that stuff, I do everything I do alcoholically, even in sobriety. Like, I have, my sobriety date's March 2nd, 2018, so I have a little over 7 years right now. But along my sobriety journey, there's been PlayStation during COVID. I literally had to look and 12-step a damn PlayStation 4 because it was destroying my relationship with my wife and my kids, because I have 4 beautiful kids, and it was just like, what in the hell is wrong with me, And then it goes from that during COVID, of course, because I wasn't going to meetings and I was just sponsoring guys, and that, thank God for that, because that's what kept me sober. And then it goes to, softball was always, I was just cracked out playing recovery softball. Like, not literally, but figuratively. Like, it was my drug. That's what I did, there's just so many things. It's funny to look at it because I'm stubborn as hell. I don't want to look at that kind of stuff, prideful, arrogant, egotistical, you name it. But when it comes down to it, for me, all of this stuff is not anything I wanted to do. Like, with the recovery side of it, because I just wanted to just drink and party, and when I died, I died. Like, I didn't care. I had no future. So I skipped ahead again. Sorry, I do that a lot, guys. But, so when I was 30, was like, because drug court, like, I'll be honest, I went to drug court and played the game, and I was just trying to graduate and slide under the radar and still party on the weekends and hope I'd pass my UAs. Like, and, like, I was going to meetings, and this is just, I'm going to be honest. I went to meetings to sell oxys. No shit. Like, it was easy. And it's terrible to say. Like, looking at it now, it's like, man, like, what in the hell? But that's how sick I was. Like, I just wanted what I wanted, and that was nice clothes, like, just all the external shit that I used to hide whatever the mess was that was going on inside of me. And so that, I mean, I didn't graduate, surprise. I almost did. Almost. So I didn't graduate. They issued a warrant. I'm not going to get into what all happened, but let's just say I got caught, and I didn't want to admit it. So I ran, like what I always do. I run. Moved to Arizona. Got a fake ID. I was like, they're never going to find me. But I had a habit to feed and all that, so I was going to Mexico. I was going to Nogales all the time. And my dumbass decided to leave my real ID behind my fake ID because I was, yeah. Anyways, when I came back to the U.S., they caught me. Yeah, like at that point, about a year later. So I get holed up and I get put in the Nogales jail, which is right on the border. It's no joke. I'm a skinny, white, blue-eyed kid sitting in this jail with a bunch of border brothers and guys, and you think that would be enough. Like, you think that, man, I don't know if I want to live this lifestyle anymore. You know, I was 21 years old, and I'm like, no, it wasn't. Like, I'll be honest, I was like, I got extradited back to Utah on a freaking public plane in shackles, and it did not. Like, it didn't change my mind. I was just like, oh, I'll just stay away from the hard stuff. I'll just keep drinking when I get out of jail. So I do my 9 months, whatever, get put on probation. And I continue to just drink, and, you know, I get a prescription so that way my PO can't take me to jail, and I just continue to do what I'm doing. It's always gaming the system. That's all I ever wanted to do was game the system. And, you know, along that road, it just boom, boom, boom again. Just kept doing what I was doing. And then at 30, so that's from, like, I get married in that time, which was a great idea, you know. And I don't know what the hell I was thinking, but I got married because I know what I was thinking. As long as I had a girl that had her shit together, I was okay. You know, she didn't do drugs. She didn't do all that. Again, it's all about this facade and to make everyone think I'm okay. But yeah, so I get married and keep doing what I'm doing. She stays with me and whatever. Then at 28, I have to run again because now the major crimes are after me. So I have to run again, and I go to North Carolina. And I'm like, I'll get sober in North Carolina, you know. I'm going to go out there and sell alarms and stay sober. You know, I take all my money thinking that's a great idea. So I go out there for a summer, and I get on methadone to stay sober. Didn't work. Imagine that. And so then I do all that. Anyways, but my ex-wife now, I was married at the time, convinces me to go to rehab when I'm 30. Like, she's like, you gotta go, you gotta figure it out. And I was like, no, I'm good. And then she's like, well, we can look into this place. And I knew some people that ran treatment centers, so I called one of them. And I went to a treatment center because I had rules. Like I said, they couldn't do AA and they couldn't take me to church. And so I went to this treatment center in Sardine Canyon or something up in Logan. And did the whole thing, graduated. Had no intention of staying sober. It was just to get her off my back and my family off my back. And so I do that. I get out, start drinking again, like immediately. I don't even think I gave myself a week. It was like, I'm out of treatment, 60 days, woohoo, time to go again. And the drinking for me at that time was when it was probably the worst. And it just never connected. Like, it never landed that if I start here, I'm going to end up here. It was just like, no, that won't happen to me again. I'll stay away from that stuff. And so I just drinking, and my ex, well, she was my wife at the time, but she gets pregnant, and I'm scared to death. Like, because I was like, dude, I can't be a dad. Like, I'm a mess, and I was just like, I don't want to put my kid through what I went through, and just going, the hamster's going, and I'm thinking, oh, I'll just keep drinking and I'll feel better. So I kept doing that. And then I'm drinking this. So my son's born. And I immediately went and got pills. It's just the truth. Because I don't know what I was thinking. I just couldn't handle it. And I ran to what made me feel good. And you think the birth of my son would make me feel good, but it just scared me to death because I knew I wasn't ready. So that started my last, go. And that 18 months, I used for the first 18 months of my son's life. And it was bad. It was anything I could get my hands on. It did not matter. And thank God for one of my friends that I grew up with. He called me on my 33rd birthday. And I still text him every year on my 33rd birthday and say thank you. Because I don't know why he called me. I hadn't talked to him in a few years. He moved to Maryland, and, I was just doing what I was doing. But he called me, and he's like, Colby, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm fine. He's like, no, you're not. I see who you're hanging out with on Facebook. Dude, you're not fine. And I'm like, okay, you might have a point. But he just knew what to, I don't even know. He just was like, look, he's like, you need to go to treatment, call one of our mutual friends, Sean, and see if he can get you into treatment. And he was like, because if you don't, he's like, you're going to destroy your son like you destroyed every relationship since your mom died. He's like, you don't let anyone get close. And for some reason, I was higher than a kite. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm sitting there, and I was like, okay, this was my thought process. I was like, it's either I get sober and change, or I leave my son and go do what I'm going to do and just stay out of his life. And I was thinking that was the better option. the second one because I didn't think I had any chance in hell staying sober. And for some reason, I mean, say it was God, it was like, okay, call Sean. And I called him in that moment, and he's like, what are you doing? You know, and I was like, well, I need to get into treatment. He said, okay, we'll meet. So I met with him the next day, and they did their whatever the treatment centers do to get you in. I don't know, I was hired in balls. But he was like, all right, you can come check in today. And I was like, no, it's my birthday weekend, dude. I'll check in on Monday. And he was like, no, you're coming today or you're not coming, you know. And I was like, oh, man. All right, well, I guess I'm going then. And I went, and I had my rules again. Guys, I still had my rules, no AA and no church. And so I check in, and I'm like 110 pounds, looking like an alien, you know, like long hair, just, and I thought I looked good. That's my ego, you know. Like, I'm already a skinny guy. You take 30 pounds off me, I'm looking like I'm on death's doorstep. But I thought I looked good still. That was a trip. But, so I check into treatment, and I still got to have my things, right? Because it's all about my things. It's all about what people see, not actually what I am. So I'm worried about, like, my shoes and my, you know, all this dumb stuff that, who cares, you know? So I go and I check in, and, you know, I went there with the intention of, like, I've got to do this. Like, but I still had my rules. And, you know, they put me on Suboxone to taper me, and I didn't want to be on it. I actually told him no, and he's like, no, you have to, because we're social detoxing you. If you don't take it, we're going to have to take you to a detox. And so I took it for 2 days. That's why my sobriety date's March 2nd, because I finally was just like, dude, I'm good. I'll be fine. Like, you don't have to worry. And the doctor hated me at that treatment center because he wanted to give me all the meds they give you. And I said, no. I was like, no, dude, I'll sleep when I sleep. I was like, because if I start taking this stuff in here, then I'm going to be dependent on it out there. I was like, so I'm going to sleep when I sleep. And I was up at freaking 3 a.m. every morning talking to the techs. And that happened to be, I'm just going to be honest because it's part of my story, that happened to be where I met my wife. She worked there. Now, I say that, you know, it's kind of not the best idea, but it's worked for me and I'm grateful for it, you know. And like, I had no idea I was going to date her or anything like that. I was still married when I went to treatment. So there was nothing, like, I was planning on working on my marriage. But my ex-wife had other ideas. And, you know, she comes up at, I'm 30 days, I got to talk about that. So my therapist, in his infinite wisdom, was like, okay, Colby, I know you don't want to go to AA. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't. He's like, all right, we'll go to one meeting. Just go to one meeting tonight. If you don't hear anything that stands out to you, I'll get you a refuge recovery book. And I was like, okay, I can do that. A little bit of willingness, you know, just a tiny bit. And I was like, all right. So I go, and I see it again. What I saw when I was 18, 19, first going to AA. I saw people that were happy, healthy, smiling. I saw people that I wanted what they had, you know, and I was like, okay, I'm going to go to AA. You know, like that was it for me. Then that Sunday, he's like, well, maybe you should go to the church just one time, you know. And I'm like, I'm not going to the Mormon church, dude, you know. I was like, I'm good. Grew up there, I'm good. He's like, this is a Christian church. I was like, okay, I'll go, And I loved it. Like, just real quick, I ended up getting baptized there. And it's been a huge part of my program as well. I'll touch on that later. But, so I'm in treatment, and I'm 30 days into treatment. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm feeling good. I'm looking healthy again. My ego's just ready to rip again. And I was like, heck yeah. And my sponsor, because by this time I asked a guy to be my sponsor. And, I'll be honest, like me finding a sponsor was hard. Like I was trying to get my buddy Sean to sponsor me. And he's like, dude, I can't sponsor you. I work here. And I'm like, why not, dude? Like I grew up with you. You know my whole story, because he told the freaking clinical director everything about me, so I couldn't get away with shit in that treatment center. And I was used to being able to manipulate my way through all these things, Didn't work there. Like I wanted to play softball all the time, and they wouldn't let me play softball all the time, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and they just, so I had to realize some things. But so at 30 days, I'm like, yeah, my wife at the time comes and says, she comes to visit me, and we have a therapy session together, and I was like, I think I'm ready to leave. I was like, I'm ready to go. And she's like, you might not be after this therapy session. And I'm like, what, did you cheat on me? Like, that's fine. I was cheating on you the whole time with drugs and other things. Like, it's all good, Like, I was an alcoholic at bars. Like, you don't think that I didn't, like, I did some really terrible things to my ex-wife, I was dishonest. It was, so to me it was like, whatever you did, Anyway, I'm only going to talk about this because it ties into my recovery, like the whole open-mindedness thing, because it tripped me out. But by this time I have my sponsor, right? And he's always great guy, still my sponsor today, super grateful for him. But so that one, when that went down, we go to the therapy session, and she tells me she wants to do polyamory. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, So I don't know how I feel about that. And like, alcoholic me would have been down, because then it would have been like no guilt. I could have done whatever I wanted. I was like, I'm sober. Like I can't, and I got mad. And needless to say, I wasn't ready to leave treatment after that. And so my sponsor, when we talked, and he has some questions he always asks. And so that reading that Tua read was from the T-Boo Papers, the Ego Factors, Surrender from Alcoholism. He's asking me questions, and he's like, hey, so what are you good at? And I'm giving him the typical treatment center answers. I mean, you guys know that are in treatment. You're like, manipulation, this, and he's like, no, like, what are you good at? And I was like, well, I'm good at baseball, and he's all right, well, I should have known it was a trap. But I was like, I'm good at baseball. And he's all right, what if I told you I could take you outside right now and teach you something you don't know about baseball? And I'm like, bullshit. And he goes, you need the ego papers. And that was the first thing I did before I did any steps, was read all about this. And if you read them, I suggest reading them, because I love them. But man, they're a hard read. Like, I read those damn things for like 2 or 3 weeks trying to understand even what the hell it meant, But then stuff started standing out, and I started to realize how much my ego played into this whole deal, because there's no way I was going to surrender to a deity if I thought I was that deity. And So I get out of treatment. 7 days later, I'm separated, and I was like, okay, whatever, I'll go move in with my dad and sleep on the couch in the salon, like glamorous life. And so I move in there, and I'm fighting this the whole time. And my sponsor just keeps saying, like, dude, have an open mind, have an open mind. And I'm like, dude, I'm trying to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with my relationship, and you just keep telling me to have an open mind and pray about it. I'm like, I need some advice. Like, I need some, and he's like, dude, have an open mind. Pray about it. And I'm, during this, I've done like step 1, and I've done step 2 by this time. And so I finally do pray about it. And, I was fine turning drugs and alcohol over to God. I wasn't fine turning relationships and finances and all this other stuff they want you to do in AA to him. I was like, dude, I got that, but I finally did. I prayed about it, and I woke up in the morning, and I was like, I'm going to ask for a divorce. I was like, I'm done, And I call him and tell him, I'm going to ask for a divorce. And he says, I'm glad you came to that conclusion. He's like, and I'm like, dude, what? And he's like, well, I was like, I thought you were telling me to have an open mind about the polyamory. Because that's what I thought. Like, that's what my mind was thinking. And he's like, no. He's like, I wanted you to be okay with just letting go of this security blanket that you've had for so long. And then that completely, like, from that point on, I was serious about my recovery, honestly, from, like, pretty early in treatment. Because once I started doing the 12 steps and talking to a sponsor and all that, I started to feel a change. And I liked it. And that doesn't mean that it's been all sunshine and rainbows since I've been sober. There's been some hard things. But anyways, so that gets me onto this. Like, even when my sponsor always, one of the things that made me ask him to be, and this is the truth, is he got up there and said, like, you're supposed to pick someone that has what you want. And when he got sober, everyone was wearing coveralls with no teeth, and because he has 40 years sober now, and he's a black guy, and he was like, I don't want anything these guys have. I like Armani suits and Beamers. And I was like, that's my guy, I'm gonna ask him. That was it. It was, but he also was very open and honest, and that's what I wanted. Like, he could get up and stand in front of people and talk and tell them, and it was like he was at peace. And I didn't know what peace felt like. I had no idea. I'd been running my whole life trying to fill the God-sized hole that was in here with substances and women and you name it, alcohol, like nice things, money. And what ended up happening after I said that prayer is I felt the freedom that I've never felt before. And it was like, okay, it's time to do it. Like I'd done, step 1 and step 2, and then I got really into AA, and I went to a lot of meetings for a long time until COVID happened. And, it took me a year to get through the steps. It wasn't fast, because every time I would do a step, my sponsor, in his infinite wisdom, would make me apply it for 3 damn weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, and talk to him about the application of that step. And it changed the way I looked at everything. Like, because I would It was everything was all about what I could take when I was in my addiction and in my alcoholism. And it slowly started to change to what I can give and what I can do for other people instead of it being, and what God can do. Because to be honest, for me, the more and more I got into this program, I was realizing that it was all about a higher power, and it was about spirituality, not so much about religion, and a relationship. And I started trusting God with everything and talking to my sponsor about everything. Before I started dating Jess, I called and I was like, hey, and he's like, well, we pray about it. And I'd pray about it. There'd be times that we'd be driving down the street and I'd want to say something, and I was like, I probably need to say a prayer first. As soon as I started feeling agitated or irritated or any of that, I'm like, I should probably pray, And that just became a habit. It just became natural for me to pray. But I like I said, it's my ego can roar, and so after COVID and the PlayStation addiction, I thought it was time. I got 5 years, and I thought it was time for me to graduate AA. Be completely honest. So I stopped going to meetings. I was like, I'm good. I'm working. I've got everything I need. I've got the place to live, a car, got my kids, I've got the girl. I'm good, Yeah, I do not suggest that, because about everything, I was miserable. I turned into a dry drunk real quick. But I'm also prideful. So I was like, I'm not going back to AA. I'm not doing this. I'm not calling my sponsor that often. I'm not. So I just kept on going to work and, wanted to kill people every day. The only thing that I did right during that 6 to 9 months is I didn't pick up a drink. That's it. I'm not a shining example of a perfect program by any way, shape, or form. I got divorced in the first year, got in a relationship in the first year, got my now wife pregnant in the first year. The only thing I did do right is I did the steps and took the actions. And I got up in the morning and I prayed and I turned my will over to God every morning. Simple as, God, let me do thy will today, not mine. And throughout the day I'd pray and I'd help another alcoholic. And I work in excavation, so I'm surrounded by them regardless. So through this program, I've seen guys get sober that had no idea they even really, that they could do it. Just guys that I work with, because I'm trying to live and be in the steps even when I'm at work, instead of just come to meetings and spit fire and go home. To me, it's about the action of doing. It's about the walk, not the talk. I can't quote anything out of the big book, if you want me to be completely honest. I'm a 12 and 12 guy. I love it. I read the first 164 because it was suggested, and of course I read Acceptance is the Answer and all those things that everyone tells you to read, But the 12 and 12 is what I live by. And, it's like my sponsor, I learned very quickly with him because, I was like, do I got to call you every day? And he's like, dude, if you call me every day, I'll hang up on you. So I didn't call him every day. I called him when I needed him. And then over time, I built a relationship with him. And I would talk to him, and I asked him, because, you hear, like, I heard a lot that you got to call me every day for like the first 30 days, and then we'll get into your steps and all this stuff. And I was like, why'd you do that? And he's like, because the whole point of the program is to become God reliant, not sponsor reliant. He's like, that's what it did for me. You know, and because I don't call my sponsor all the time, but I call him when there's big decisions to be made, or I'm like when I was in my 5-year funk, I called him and he was like, dude, you're not going to like what I have to hear. He's all, what I have to say, he's all, but he's like, you need to go back to meetings and you need to start looking at what you can give to the meeting instead of take from the meeting. And I was like, huh, and my wife was like, thank God you're going back to meetings, because, and my sponsees, like I was saying some crap to them that I never should have said, like I was on a whole nother, I was on some bullshit, I'll be honest, but I was so far into my ego and my pride that I just didn't want to call him. I didn't want to tell them I was wrong. I just wanted to graduate AA. And I've accepted that I'm not going to. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm grateful to know that today. And, because of AA, my life is beautiful. Like, I have 4 kids. Coped up my son that I had from my ex-wife. He doesn't remember me being high or drunk. He was young, so I've got 4 kids that never have to see it. If I do what I know to do, there's little things that I do every day that have got me here. Like, it's not huge things. It's really simple. I just like to complicate the shit out of it, and it's, and after once I started going back to meetings, some of my sponsors like, you got to go to a meeting. And so I went back to meetings and, years 6 through 7 was pretty smooth. Imagine that, and it's been smooth. Like, everything's going good at work. I'm not trying to fight guys I work with. I'm still egotistical. Like, I still have my moments. Like, I'm doing my best to try to dampen it, but it's still there, And through this program, I have a relationship with God that I never thought was possible. I say a lot of things, and one of them is, if you look at my story from 13 to 33, the common denominator between all that is I was a victim. And I stayed being a victim. And I wanted everyone to feel sorry for me because my mom died, and I used it to manipulate people and to get what I wanted. And very early on, my sponsor called me on that, and I have a sponsor that's brutally honest and is very militant about this kind of stuff. And he's not afraid to hurt my feelings, and thank God. And he was just like, dude, victims don't stay sober. And so that's one thing I say a lot of, because there's always a reason. If I see myself or feel myself getting into that victim mentality, I get right back into the steps because I know it's a dangerous place for me. And, it's worked. I'm so grateful that there is rooms like this. Like, me sharing my story in front of a bunch of people was not like my ideal way to spend a Saturday night, but I'm grateful that I get to do it, and it's funny, my sponsor called me right as this meeting was starting, and I was like, that to me, that's God again, it's just one of those things that I've noticed. I've had so many things happen since I've gotten sober that I can't call it anything else other than, call it higher power, call it what you want. I'm going to call it God. I'm not going to shy away from it. And without the steps and without the application of the steps, I wouldn't be sober today. Like, without AA, there's no way. Like, I still get in my modes where I want to control situations. And, especially with my family. Like, I still have brothers. Well, I have a brother that just checked into treatment, thank God. And my family's a mess. Like, it's a beautiful mess, but it's just messy, And I love them to death, but holy shit, it's like never in a million years did I thought I would be like the more reasonable one. But like, it's those kind of things that get me off kilter. Like, if it's something with my kids or something with my family, like my wife, it's real easy for me to get back into like where I want to control the situation. But I know what to do to get out of it. It's just a matter of me not being a prideful, arrogant douchebag and actually doing it. And, my brother, when I finally let it go and stopped like just ramming AA down his throat, because that's what I was doing every time he'd call me drunk, I'd just ram it down his throat. And I stopped doing it, and then he calls me and says, hey, I'm checking into treatment. But during that time, I stopped doing it, and I started praying for him instead of me trying to do it. Again, I'm not perfect. I don't like turning over like my finances, my relationships, and everything else. Like, the drugs and alcohol was cool, but everything else, I find myself taking it back, and here and there I take this back, and then I'm like, okay, that's not, I better give that back, and that's just the way it's worked for me the whole time. I like to make things difficult, let's say. I don't know, it's been a trip because I have everything I need, want, and desire right now. Plain and simple. If you'd asked me when I first got sober if this stuff would happen, that I'd be where I'm at, I would have told you there's no way. I thought I was a hopeless mess. Like, I just didn't think I'd even live to see 40. I just turned 40 and then got my 7 years right after that. But, and it's because of AA and the 12 steps. Like, that's the only thing, and God, that's the only thing. Like, I can sit up here and tell you all these great things, but the fact is, God and AA are the reason why I'm here today in the 12 steps. For me, it's about emotional sobriety. I suck at it sometimes. Some days I'm at 5%, some days I'm at 100. I like to be somewhere in the middle, But my sponsor, like, it's all these little things. It's just like, dude, you're at 5% today. It is what it is. Like, you got tomorrow. Like, you're staying sober. Like, when I get time, he's very quick to tell me, like, dude, it's one day at a time, because my ego gets big and I think I'm awesome. And it's just as simple as he just tells me, dude, you can't put the shit in a bank account. It's one day at a time. Like, you have today. You did bad today. Do better tomorrow. And it's that kind of simple stuff that I just look at. And then I turn around and spout it all at my sponsees. And they probably hate me because they call me with problems. And I'm like, pray about it. It's simple, and it's, for me, I'm eternally grateful for this program because without it, I wouldn't be here. I'd be dead. Like, I'll be completely honest. More than likely, there's no way. And I wouldn't have 4 beautiful kids, a relationship with a higher power that I call God, a relationship with my family. Like, my dad, I'm going down to play golf with him next weekend, and some of my brothers, in a family golf tournament. I wasn't the guy to get invited to that stuff because they were afraid I was going to steal their shit, And now I get to go, and I get to have a good time. I have a great job, but all that stuff is just, like, all the things I have are just things now. Like, that isn't what makes me. Like, God has moved in to that hole that I used to fill with all the other stuff. And without AA and the 12 steps, there is no way I could have done that by myself. But anyways, it's close enough to 8. I think I'm going to shut up. Thank you so much, guys.